discuss technology. All right, so it's my pleasure to invite you to join me here, Anderson Tez, Managing Director and Founding Partner of RedPoint Ventures. Anderson has been in our team for over 5 years, I think, as a board member. You'll be meeting all our board members throughout the day. And I invited Anderson because obviously RedPoint Ventures is a major player in Brazil. And I invited Anderson to talk about what's going on in the entrepreneurial environment of Brazil. So Anderson, thanks for being here. And he's going to be joined in a little bit with, by Flávio Pripas and Eduardo Lins Henrique.
Thank you, Margarese. Good morning, everyone. Bom dia. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thanks for once again giving me the opportunity to talk to this great crowd here. I'm going to be pretending to talk about the evolution of the ecosystem for a few minutes. The key goal of this presentation is actually to get you guys started thinking about questions for the panel that we are going to have. It's a very interesting opportunity we have here. We're going to have Flávio Pripas from the CEO of Cubo, together in the panel here with Edu from Movili. So these are two very special people from the ecosystem in Brazil. They have seen and lived through a lot in the last few years. So please take the advantage to make the most questions that you want about anything. If you don't, I'll keep asking. And if not enough, I'll ask Edu to play guitar as well, because he's a great guitar player. Quickly about me, Margarese mentioned it. I'm a founding partner of RedPoint Ventures. We do early stage investments in Brazil. We launched our firm in 2012. Since then, we've made 24 investments in Brazil. My background before that, I've been an investor in Brazil since 2003. So this gave me a very interesting perspective on how the ecosystem has evolved in the last 15 years. And we did more in the last 3 than in the last 15 combined, for sure. So I think it's a very, very special moment for Brazil. There is a combination of factors that we at RedPoint believe it's very important. It's no rocket science, but I think it's nice to put them together as to why the moment in Brazil is very special right now for technology. First and most important is the tech momentum. This is global. It's not the exclusivity of Brazil, but looks like Brazil woke up for it in the last few years in a much stronger way. I think fintech was the first big push. Probably commerce was the first one, but it was natural. Fintech was unnatural. It was a challenger for the establishment. And I think now the whole Brazil market, on and offline, are paying much more attention to technology. Second, very important factor that we have is the evolution of the ecosystem. The last 2 to 3 years is the first time that we have all the conditions to run a company properly in Brazil. So I usually tease entrepreneurs, there is no excuse anymore. We can improve everything, like we can improve everything here in Silicon Valley, but there is no reason not to build a fantastic business in Brazil today. It was much, much harder 10 years ago. Oddly enough, and I think the most important thing for us to discuss here is the economic cycle. When we raised our first fund in 2012, Brazil was booming, was the darling of the global markets, and we were saying, Brazil is great, it's growing a lot, but the technology is going to grow faster because it's disconnected from the GDP, right? What we have to build in Brazil is a big catch-up until we are subject to GDP fluctuations in the technology. It's going to be a couple of decades. And not good to the country, but good for the technology ecosystem. The economy turned, and we ended up proving this the hardest way possible. So we are living the worst crisis in Brazil for the last 3 years, and it has been the best 3 years for the technology and entrepreneurial ecosystem in Brazil ever. So we ended up proving that this economic cycle will bring a lot of very good things to the ecosystem in Brazil. A lot of people, because I'm an investor, a lot of people think, oh, cheap prices, right, for investment. That's true too, but I think the most important thing is the flow of talent from traditional businesses to the startup environment. The quality of people that we see on the founding teams has always been good and only improved, but in the lower ranks of the startups, the quality now is far, far better than before, and continuing to do. And the last one that I'm happy to talk a little bit about, but we should be actually asking Edu, is the mobile shift, which is a reality, and a lot of things is happening on back of this new revolution. Very quickly here, the idea here is just to show how things changed in Brazil in the last 10 years. If we were to look at the ecosystem in Brazil in 2008, this was on the eve of the acquisition of Buscapé. That was sort of a trigger for this new wave of investments in Brazil. The reality is completely different. So today we have a very good amount of people taking it really serious in all the dimensions that we need. The volume of startups is much bigger, the quality as well. In terms of innovation hubs is a lot more as well. Accelerators, we had up and downs, but we have a lot of accelerators operating today, associations. More recent and very important is the participation of corporations in the ecosystem, and obviously availability of capital. That's where we play, but the ecosystem evolved a great deal as well. This here is a slide we actually present here every year. It's mostly showing how staged finance is working in Brazil. That's what VCs do. We help entrepreneurs grow in rounds of capital, Series A, Series B, C, and so on. So this shows the evolution of the rounds in Brazil. It's not complete yet for last year. There are a few rounds that are not announced. We cannot comment yet. But you see that more and more we have later stage companies raising interesting rounds in Brazil. We used to, here we are doing from Series A and beyond. We used to do seed, A, B, and C. There is no way to do seed anymore. First, because we would only see seed investments there because everything else would be very small. And second, frankly, because we don't know all the seed investments that are happening in Brazil anymore. It's a lot. We have over 7,000 angels operating in Brazil today. So it's a much, much more mature market compared to what we had. This I borrowed from Lavica. It's showing a different perspective, how the world is paying attention to the Brazilian ecosystem. So the fact that global investors are more and more committing capital to Brazil. So these are people that could be investing literally anywhere in the world, and they are picking Brazilian startups to deploy their capital. This is very helpful and an important part of the ecosystem as well. Let me pause. Any questions so far?
Because you say Brazilian, but it's Latin America.
Yeah, you're right. This one I stole from Lavica, which is the Latin America Venture Capital Association. You are spot on.
How is the political situation in Brazil? Does that affect the tech industry able to be insulated from the madness that's going on, presidential election and this insecurity, or no?
It is irrelevant for the most part. It's not. It is relevant in two major things. One is perception of international investors towards the country. So new investors looking at Brazil, they're going to look at what's happening inside, but typically before they look at what's happening in the macro economy, which is a mistake from an investment perspective. Many times the turmoil is precisely what creates the opportunity. To some extent, this is true to Brazil. But yes, that's one impact, and the other one is exits. Most of the exits, which is an important part of the cycle, is when the investors realize their investments and we turn the circle, as we say. Also, the macroeconomy and political situation refrains a little bit some investors from making the step. So these are the two things. The rest is pretty much irrelevant. Could be better. we would rather have a less bureaucratic process to start companies and so on, but it's not, as I mentioned before, it's no excuse. It works really, really well. Anyone?
I remember like 15 years ago, during the dot-com boom, there were all these startups, and I used to do a lot of business back in Brazil back then. I would say, well, what about stock options for employees, and they would say, well, they really don't exist in Brazil. What's the situation now for, startups?
Spectacular question. Thank you so much. This is something we are learning in Brazil. It is something that we, Redpoint, try to push as much as we can. It's an important part of the incentives here. It's much better. Developers and entry-level employees still don't have complete clarity on what it means and how it works. What we have already, which is great, is a lot of companies are implementing it. So now we start to see with the new exits, which is actually the next slide, we are going to have tangible examples of that. So we have in companies like Movili, I don't know if Edu can talk about it later, but I'm gonna anyways. In Movili 99 with the exit, we had a bunch of employees that received the stock options that did a really decent financial return. So this is a concrete example that will help the whole ecosystem understand the value of stock option. But we do push it, and I think most of the top funds are helping solidify that as well. There are challenges. The legal framework is not ideal and so on, but yes, we are using it far more than in 2000. So this is probably one of the best recent developments we see in the ecosystem. There was always the criticism that, there are no exits in Brazil. I'm focusing on Brazil because Bay Brazil event, but it's for LATAM as well. It was always a little bit of a fallacy. We are not good at talking about the exits we have, but we always had a lot of exits in the hundreds of millions. But these days, people like to talk about billions and unicorns and so on. And this year, we started to see a bunch of very sizable exits. And this is the tip of the new vintage of companies that are maturing in Brazil. So we have around 30 other companies that not all of them will be as successful, but another 30 companies that could be in this chart in 2 to 3 years if things keep going as they are. So it's very reassuring. And here it's something I'm particularly proud of, and I have no doubt it's iconic as well, but instead of myself talking, I'm going to invite Flávio first to stage to talk a little bit about the new Cubo that we just launched, and then I will invite Edu to join us later for the Q&A. Questions yet for the panel? Keep churning it, huh?
Flávio Pripas, Managing Director of Cubo.
So thank you, Anderson. Thank you, Margarisi, for the invite. Good morning, everyone. My name is Flávio Pripas. I'm Cubo's Managing Director. For those who doesn't know Cubo is an initiative to foster entrepreneurship in Brazil. It's a place where we are connecting people. We are connecting there at Cubo entrepreneurs with other entrepreneurs, investors, universities, and also big companies. We have been operating for 3 years right now. We have just moved to another space where we will have almost 3,000 people coming every day to talk about entrepreneurship, new business models, new technologies, new ways of working, new ways of doing things, which is a great thing for the local ecosystem. I have been working in this ecosystem since 2008. I have a lot of friends here in the audience. And just like Anderson said, things evolved a lot in the past 3 years. To share with you just some data about Cubo, as I mentioned, we just moved to this new space, which is almost 5 times bigger than the old space where we were. And we published some data about Cubo. Just in 2018, Cubo startups, most of them are B2B startups, but we helped them close more than 700, we helped them close, not almost, but exactly 728 contracts with big companies. So Cubo is a place where we connect startups with prospective customers, and we have been helping them close real deals. So they have closed more than 700 contracts. They had revenues on top of 230 million reais, which is a very good number for startups. We have startups there with 1, 2, 3 years of operation, and they are doing revenues more on top of 5 million reais per year per startup. They have created more than 500 jobs. So very interesting numbers of startups that we are seeing just by helping them connect with the market. Those are just numbers for 2018. There was a question about the political and also economic environment in Brazil. And the numbers that we have in 2018, just in the first 8 months of 2018, they are 100% more than the numbers from 2017. So the market is getting more mature, and we are very happy with what we are creating. Everyone is invited to get to know Kubo when you are in Brazil. And as I said, we are a place where we connect people. So this is a place where we are creating a culture of going to a place where you can close a business deal. And we are getting very good results out of it. Just a brief introduction about Kubo, and we will have a panel to talk more about what is happening there. Do you want me to invite Eduardo to come? Please go ahead. Please, Eduardo, if you can join us.
Eduardo Lins Henrique, head of BizDev at Movely and also co-founder of Movely.
Hello, good morning. It's a pleasure to be back. I couldn't attend the last 2 editions, but I was here at Stanford in the first edition. It's good to be back from the Valley. I used to live here for 5 years and a half, and then I made a crazy plan to move to Miami and open our office in the East Coast. Some friends didn't understand, but I can talk later about this. So we have this journey at Movely. Sometimes Anderson puts good numbers, beautiful numbers there, and probably you think, these guys are super smart. I prefer to tell you that we work very hard, and things are not easy at all. So if you want to do things in Brazil, you have to start from zero sometimes. These guys started from zero. So Kubo, beautiful building today. You think, these guys are great. There's a lot of money. Anderson is rich, has a lot of... No, they work very hard to build the ecosystem. There was no ecosystem, almost no ecosystem in Brazil. These guys built from scratch. So sometimes if you want to build something big in Brazil, you have to start from zero. And this is more or less what we do every day. We start things from zero and think very big, building big projects.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. Very kind words. But I really want you guys to take advantage of making questions, posing questions to anyone here. I'll keep asking if you have them. If not, we'll keep chatting. But I know these guys for many years, so it's you should take advantage of the opportunity. So let's kick off. Any questions?
Well, my question is for Edu, and I'm very curious about the challenges of getting a Brazilian company to U.S. market. So I know it's a very open question, but if you can give your summary insights on your experience, that would be great. Thank you.
We opened our office here with 1 person and 1 desk in 2012. The dream was we have to build a global company. So Brazilians are not good in thinking big. There's just a few cases like Embraer or the 3G guys and some Stefanini, CT is also good. But in general, the Brazilian entrepreneurs, they think small. Why we decided to open the office here? To learn from Silicon Valley how to build a global company. Internally, we had some goals to try to launch projects here. We spent a lot of money trying to enter here, and we failed miserably for 18 months. The good news is that being here in Silicon Valley, learning from the events, from smart people that we meet here, we learn how to move much faster and think even bigger than we were thinking at that time. So we failed miserably in entering in many areas. We were lucky, after 25 projects that we failed, we launched an application for kids, with videos for kids. I say lucky because we were lucky that probably we were working very hard and our competitors were on a holiday.
The harder you work, the luckier you get, right?
September 7th, so holiday, and we are working. But and then we got the chance to find an opportunity after improving a lot and running fast and failing fast and learning fast. We learned this methodology from Silicon Valley. And then we had the chance to bring Play Kids globally to more than 100 countries. So we are still learning a lot. So bringing Play Kids global is totally different than bringing iFood to other countries, other markets. It's a different pace. So it's very difficult, it's challenging, but what is good is we have more success stories. We have more access to resources and information. So when we started 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we had to build our own servers in our locker room. I don't remember, in the kitchen. The servers were in the kitchen. Now we have AWS, you have Azure, etc. So it's much easier. You have more access to information. So Stanford, Harvard, the best universities, you have access to knowledge. You have more people that did this journey, so I think it's much easier now than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Can I add just something to that? We always say that the Brazilian market is big enough to justify for an entrepreneur to focus on the Brazilian market. And this is one of the reasons that most of the entrepreneurs that we have there, they do not look to go global. But I have been in this ecosystem for the past 10 years, and in the past 2 or 3 years, I have seen companies starting to open branches or to open new markets. PSafe or Gympass or others.
Pipefy started here.
So this is a very good movement for the ecosystem there. They are, I think, entrepreneurs in Brazil, they are world class. And they are starting to go to other markets, and they can compete just against the others. And it's something that is very recent, and it's very good.
Yeah, I was going to come pretty much in line. That's just to qualify one thing that Edu mentioned, which I think it's really, really interesting to pinpoint. Winning in Brazil, in the minds of an entrepreneur, is thinking small. You see, Movile ate Brazil by very few years. They conquered the whole Brazil market, and that was definitely small for them. Then I was still at the board, and when we failed with Latin America a couple of times, and then it worked, and they won Latin America, and now pursuing the world. So thinking small is not winning São Paulo or becoming one of the players in São Paulo. Being the key player in Brazil is thinking small today for a lot of entrepreneurs in Brazil, which is great. It's a brilliant shifting mindset.
And then just a little comment. When we had to go to Latin America, we failed a lot trying to do by ourselves. We raised more money, and we made an acquisition that was super risky to bring more people with more knowledge in the countries that we were not operating well. So usually Brazilians, they have a little problem in understanding that bringing more money, more investors, or more partners, more entrepreneurs on board is a problem, because I will decrease my shares in the company. So we always thought very big that building a bigger pizza was much better than have a small slice.
But you mentioned something that I think Brazilians, they are starting to understand better about the speed that you need to have in order to grow your company. So can you talk a little bit more about that, the experience that you had here and what you can bring there?
Yeah, with the technology and the amount of information and resources that we have today, if you don't move fast, the competition will win. So we learned in the worst way possible, spending like $100,000 in projects to launch in 4 or 5 months here in the Valley. What happened? We launched, and 3 weeks later, Facebook changed some APIs, and we failed. What's the problem? $100,000 that we spent in the project, or 6 months to find a problem or to fail? The 6 months is a total disaster. So I think I come back, Flavio, to the amount of knowledge that is available. So the Lean Startup methodology, now every entrepreneur can know about this. Other methodologies or books or programs in the best universities will teach you how to use these resources and how you have to run even faster. So in Movely, it's interesting. When Anderson made the investments, we opened an innovation lab, and I was part of this innovation lab, and it was a total disaster. We spent like 3 years with a group of guys, super innovative, like the elite troop or the elite squads of the company. It was a disaster. It was a disaster to manage this. And here in the Valley, we learned that instead of having an innovation area with super brilliant people that will save the company in 5 years, we changed to the innovation culture. That basically at Movely is fail fast and learn fast and take risks. So this is the summary on what we do. So I'm not sure if I answered properly, but today with all the competition that you have that is more global, all access of information, if you don't move fast, you fail. If you don't consolidate sometimes and become a bigger company with scale, you will fail.
Yeah, I'll qualify again. I think it's a very important theme. And about 3 months ago, we had a dinner. Fabrizio was very generous. He put together everyone that was involved in the formation of Movely 10 years ago. Coincidentally, it was also the framework of my slide. So we invested in 2008 when the first 2 companies were put together. And
the Movely Mafia, right?
The Movely Mafia.
The people mafia.
Exactly. So he mapped how many things were created out of that group, which was amazing. But what I wanted to pinpoint here is when Flavio talks about speed, the company is private. We cannot give too many numbers, but Fabrizio mentioned this in an interview, so I'm going to repeat here. From the time we invested to today, the revenue of the company grew 300. Not 300%, 300 times. So it is, it's a decent growth for a 10-year company.
I don't confirm this information. I don't know what he's talking about.
Questions?
Obrigado. Thank you for the panel. It's very interesting. I just want to move a little bit for growth, startup growth. And I'm aware that one of the struggles here in the Silicon Valley is to find a high-skilled professional, such as data scientists, software engineers, and so on. So how is, put in perspective, LinkedIn released last August a workforce report saying there is 151,000 shortage in data science skilled workers in the US. Only in Silicon Valley, 31,000, so there is no people to fill up this gap. How Brazil is managing this, how the startups, because we have to compete with the big players in the market. So how you guys retain or how you guys recruit, and how is the environment for this kind of high skill job in Brazil?
Hiring people is a challenge everywhere. We launched a platform at Cubo 2 years ago that we call Explora, to help startups recruit talent, people in the market. We have on average 500 to 700 open positions every month. So this is really a challenge. But in the past 2 years, given the Brazilian downturn, a lot of talent were there in the market. So I cannot say that it was easier, but startups, they have been able to hire very good people there. If you ask specifically about data scientists, I think this is something that there is a gap in the Brazilian market. There are just a few people that knows very well about that. But just like everywhere. So this is a challenge everywhere. In Brazil, it's also a challenge. But in the past 1 year, 2 years, a lot of talent were available in the market. They are starting to work with startups. They're helping startups grow. So and at the same time, we have some companies, even startups, that are helping teach those people so they can become developers or data scientists and so forth. So it's a movement that is very positive, but there is a gap that needs to be filled.
Yeah, what I was going to say, it's I agree with 100%. The interesting thing of this problem, which is a global problem, it's also an opportunity for Brazil. Tech in general, code writing in general, has a very specific twist as a career because it's completely independent of background. If you are a lawyer and you come from a poor upbringing, even if you are smart and bright, odds are that you're going to have disadvantage in the career because of network, because sometimes of language, accent and so on. There is no such a thing for code writing. If you are bright and you write good code, you're up there with whoever. So I think for emerging markets, this is a very interesting social mobility tool. And we, as investors, it's not out of generosity, it's critical for us, but we look for investments in education and shifts in way of creating more developers to close that gap, which is global. In Brazil today, we have openings for all technology positions. There is, if you ask me as an investor, the gap is not there. We could use a lot more developers. Where we can transfer knowledge to Brazil faster is in product, marketing, and so on. So other areas that there is also need here, but the gap is not as big. The gap of knowledge to Brazil is big. So what we do is bring our guys here, matchmaking them with top talent here for knowledge transfer and bring that back to Brazil.
And this is an opportunity not only for startups, but for the country itself. We have companies that are training thousands of people every month for them to become developers, to become engineers. So probably this kind of shortage will become better in the short term.
Edu, you're going to say?
Yeah, I'm really scared about the lack of talent. Really, really scared, especially because most of our competitors or big benchmarks are now in China, India, and they are much better than us on this. We are learning from them. So at this moment, Fabrício, Ellison, Carlos, the CEO of iFood, they are all in China learning. So we do a lot of this knowledge sharing. It's interesting because it was mostly Silicon Valley. Now we are traveling a lot to China. And it's super difficult. Sometimes we have to solve by ourselves. So sometimes we hire very young people and train them, invest a lot in more or less like trainee programs. And again, I think we have to build the market. We have to do what these guys are doing. Invest in programs to improve coding, motivate young kids to code. We have to solve the problem. We cannot expect that the government or God or somebody else will solve our problems. Seriously. We have to solve our problems. We have to invest. My dream is to build the Movile University, more or less like what Embraer did with ITA. ITA is the main font of energy of Embraer. My dream is to build in a few years the Movile University to create our talents. I
see. Them. You guys are going to buy Unicamp, right?
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
I like it.
Next questions.
Flavio Pfefferman. I've been a lecturer at Berkeley for the past 10 years, teaching courses on developing countries, Brazil. I have some Berkeley colleagues here, Pedro Moura, who works with me. We've met some of the panelists here and in Brazil. So I had a question. We talked a little bit about education and the ecosystem. A couple of years ago, I participated in a book about ecosystems of innovation around the world, and we had a lot of case studies. We had case studies on Barcelona, Tel Aviv, Munich, London, and so on. And I wrote a chapter on Porto Digital, which is a public-private partnership in Northeast Brazil. And in these case studies, we emphasize the importance of true public-private partnerships to have helped build the ecosystem. So what I see a lot happening in Brazil is still a lot of government initiatives that are fragmented, disconnected from the private sector, duplicating efforts sometimes. Certainly, BNDES has helped with Criatec 1, 2, and 3, and now they're opening an innovation center. So my question for the panel is, what kind of true public-private partnerships and programs would you like to see happen in Brazil with leadership from the private sector, but involving government and universities? How do you think those can help, and what would be your recommendations for something like that?
Flavio, 3 years ago, my answer would be very cynical. The type of help I would like to see is less. But this is changing fast. Most of the problems in Brazil today are not solved not through public-private, it's through private-private partnership. I think Kubo is an example. We co-founded with Itaú and another 14 companies. How many?
20 companies.
20 companies now joined in a true partnership. So the government is definitely missing there. We have a multilateral agency now among those 20. For me, is with us now. I think it's changing fast. There was historically a misconception in Brazil as to what a startup is. There is a confusion between startup and small business, including in which agencies are involved in the program and how the incentives are created. So, for example, you would have a tax break for startups as long as they have less than, 15 employees and revenues not more than $1 million. This is really stupid, right? Because what you want is startups to hire people and sell a lot. So this is shifting. We are not quite there yet. There are very smart people within the government bodies already, but they suffer a lot to get through the traditional way of operating of these entities. But I think we're going to get there. I visited some of the ecosystems you mentioned. I think the one I liked the most was Israel. I think it was very clever the way they did it. The government supported the ecosystem and still supports the ecosystem there. Probably we are past the opportunity of doing the same recipe in Brazil, but it's getting better. I think we're going to still learn a few cycles until it's a true partnership, but it's getting better.
I agree. I'm very sad about the participation of the government in solving big problems. We don't have an agenda with the government. I'm not sure if this is completely right or wrong, but we don't have. We are doing by ourselves. So we are building our own ecosystem with our own investors, with our own knowledge, with our own relationship. And this is what I think. And what makes me scared is that probably these guys know better than I do, but the main venture capitalists in the world is the Chinese government. And they are moving China from an infrastructure-focused company to a technology company, investing massively in the big companies, investing in the ecosystem, investing in startups, investing in venture capitals, in funds. So the competition today is the Chinese, and they're doing much better than we do. So we have to do our part. And absolutely mandatory, absolutely key. The university is not only to develop talents. The question was, what is the role of the universities in these ecosystems? Absolutely mandatory.
They feed the ecosystem. They feed the ecosystem with people. And this is one of the most important roles that they can have.
Yeah,
but we need to do much more. We think small. The universities think small. The companies think small. There is a wall between these companies. We have to be more open. Has to, in my opinion, research has to address. Of course, there's many areas that is super important, poor research, but we need to be more market driven. We need to bring this knowledge to the market and make money. We need to make money. We need to create a capital value on this partnership. So we don't have this mature in Brazil yet. In part is our fault. So we should be much closer from Unicamp. In our case, we are very close from them, and think bigger, thinking much bigger partnerships and invest.
Yeah, it's happening, Flavio, but it's grassroots. So the students of the universities are organizing themselves. They go to Cubo. We go there and do events. There aren't as many conversations with the president of the universities, so to speak.
That's why I say they feed the ecosystem with people, but in terms of research, they are very far from the market, which is something that needs to change.
It's actually pretty hard to donate to a university in Brazil if you want to. So the whole ecosystem has to be redesigned.
I'm Igor, I'm the photographer, but I'm also into technology and investment in, I represent a European company for AI. So we're interested in Brazil as well, which will be three major actions that you see from the Brazilian government that you see that could help your companies to move forward. To say, I would like to have a tax break if I have investment into education.
Stop corruption, for example, just to...
This is, I totally understand, I'm totally there with you.
This would help a lot.
Kind of ludicrous a little bit, but I'm just, factually, what will be the three most immediate things I think the Brazilian government, especially the technology aspect of the government, could help you guys to foment and grow and scale your business in Brazil? Three things I would need.
Massive investments in education, stop corruption, and massive investment in entrepreneurship and new technologies that can change the world.
Okay. Yeah. I'll throw in only one. Try to understand what we really do. If they understand that, it's great already.
And stop creating new laws to change how things are calculated and everything else. So.
Who would be responsible to understanding this? Would be like the technology side of the government, or who would you go to say, those are our ideas, and I need you to partner with us with this?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think first they should come to us. We don't know how they really work, and it's everyone. I think it's drawing a parallel to what...
No, let me just add a little bit on that. There is a Movimento Brasil Digital. It's a movement of big companies. It's a private movement. This movement, and Cubo is part of this movement, we are putting together a document to give to the new president of Brazil, to give to the new Ministry of Technology and so forth, with recommendations that the government needs to do in order to help the entrepreneurship ecosystem. So there is something happening on that. If it's going to happen or not in the future, we don't know. But we have more than 40 or 50 big companies writing this document that will be ready by the end of the month, which is a good thing.
So yeah, read that document then. Let's just...
It will be available by the end of September. Where?
Let's move around.
I can send to Margarise. She can share with everyone.
Let's turn around.
Can I ask here?
In the back. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Hello, I'm Eduardo Ibrahim. I'm an entrepreneur from Brazil, running my business, which online travel company named Trafega. And I'll do back to the private market questions about the Brazilian companies going global. What you guys think about if there is a difference between start globally from Latin America, because the proximity, or start here in San Francisco, or even in Miami, as you said, or in Europe or Asia. What's the difference for a Brazilian company when thinking globally? Where to start?
I think I will answer what Anderson will answer, because we are very aligned on this. Everything we did on Movili, we want Brazil first, and then we expand to Latin America, and then we made the next steps. The reason for this is you are Brazilian, you know Brazil well, you know the market, you have connections and networking. If you don't win Brazil with all these assets, the chances that you will win outside is very low, being brutally honest with you. So building a company and growing a company in Brazil, for you, Brazilian, is much, much easier, in my opinion. And everything we do in Movili, usually try small, and then we scale. We did this starting Brazil on mobile, bought a company in Latin America after many failings in this journey, and then we opened a small office here. And then from here, one of the products we tried to went global with many mistakes. So, in my opinion, we in Brazil first. Some things are changing. So now they have some companies that has some conditions to start here. My advice is start in your market, in your home market, and prove yourself there, and then you plan expansion.
Yeah, we are over time, I'm sorry. We will be around here most of the day. I just want to take the last 1 minute to thank you all for the questions. I think it was very engaged. Thank you so much for that. And especially thank Edu and Flavio for joining us in the panel here. Thank you, everyone.
Stay right there. I just want to ask a question to Eduardo. So are you going to announce here at our conference the date of the IPO? Special announcement.
We can't talk about this publicly.
But we are not that public. Okay, listen, I'm very proud to have these guys here because I know how much they are playing an instrumental role in the growth of the ecosystem in Brazil. And Movili is special to our heart because Movili has been a corporate member of Bay Brazil. We opened a few doors when Movili first arrived here in Silicon Valley, and I'm very proud to see all the growth you guys are having and rocking and rolling. Also, a very special thank to Flavio and to Anderson. I'm proud that both Banco Itaú and Redpoint Ventures are corporate members of Bay Brazil. I'll show all the corporate members and all our supporters after lunch, but I'm so proud of the work you are doing and that we are working together. Muito obrigada.
Thank you.
Muito obrigada.